I am here with another quote diagnosis. So, for this quote diagnosis, I decided William Blake. So, let's get started. Who was William Blake? He was an English poet, painter, and printmaker. Where was William Blake raised? He was born in Soho, London, where he lived most of his life, and was son to a hosier. That's a person who specializes in making footwear, if you're unfamiliar with the term. Sort of like stockings and stuff. Anyway, and his wife, both dissenters. Blake's early ambitions lay not with poetry, but with painting, and at the age of 14, after attending drawing school, he was apprenticed to James Bassire, engraver. What were the thematic concentrations William Blake focused on? 1. The negative opposition between energy and reason. 2. Dogmatic religious authority. 3. Self-sacrifice and forgiveness. So, we'll start with the quotes now. To see a world in a grain of sand, and a heaven in a wild flower, hold infinity in the palm of your hand, and eternity in an hour. So, in my opinion, what William Blake is saying with this poem is that if you look at something, no matter what it is, right? Big or small. If you look at something and you see all the possibility attached to it, then you hold infinity in the palm of your hand, so to speak. Because when you see the possibility in anything, then it connects with everything else, if you understand what I'm saying. And so I think that's what William Blake is hinting at there. Is that you are, your life is enhanced, your quality of life, at least where it concerns perception, is enhanced when you see the possibility, inherent in every single thing, including a grain of sand. Next quote. It is easier to forgive an enemy than to forgive a friend. And yeah, I think a lot of people can relate to this. I think Blake is saying that forgiveness, in other words, the process that needs to take place before absolution can become, even a distant hope. Forgiveness requires that you distance yourself from the, personal tragedy, from the trap of the situation. It takes an objective view of a situation that has come to ill conclusion, to really forgive, all parties to that situation, and I think what Blake is saying here is that it's easier to forgive an enemy than a friend, because the enemy is already positioned, somewhere that you have an objective view, for which you can see them, objectively, you know. And so it's different with a friend, right? A friend has their life has intermingled, merged with yours in ways, and so they're like bonded to you. You know what I mean? And so it's harder to forgive that, that bond, that and also because, not just because there's that bond, but because of what that bond has introduced into your life. It's like you get a sense of your own responsibility that escaped your awareness, because you have this bond with this person. So if they betray you, then you had some part to play in it, maybe only minor, but you had some part, and that is harder to accept in order to forgive. So it's easier to forgive an enemy because you can be more objective than you can when it's a friend who you've invited, by the way, into your subjective world, into your subjective landscape. So, that's difficult. It's difficult to forgive a friend who has betrayed you. Far more difficult. Next quote. A truth that's told with bad intent beats all the lies you can invent. Yeah, I think Blake is saying that nobody can deny reality. It's once the points of reference have been placed in an individual's mind, the points, the tangible and relational points of reference have been placed in an individual's mind, then they can't deny it. So if you told somebody a truth that perhaps made them appear in an ill light, right? It would, all those tangible relational points would connect. They would be placed in that individual's memory, in their mind. They'd crystallize. They'd connect, and that individual could not escape seeing the reality for what it is. And maybe it's not very pretty, so it can do far more damage than all the best lies. That's what Blake is saying here, in my opinion. Because the lies, they aren't going to make those points, appear. They aren't going to fix those points in a person's mind. But a truth that's told with bad intent, it already, it just unveils those points, right? They're already firmly embedded in somebody's mind. And so, of course, it's gonna, it's gonna hurt far worse to be, subject to someone, telling you everything honest that is, that isn't pretty. That's going to be far worse. So yeah, a truth that's told with bad intent beats all the lies you can invent. Next quote. If a thing loves, it is infinite. And now, I relate this William Blake quote to, the whole infinity in the palm of your hand. I think that's it. If I'm recalling it correctly. Yeah, infinity in the palm of your hand. And what I mean by that, by relating it to that, is how I was talking about possibility. Seeing the possibility in any particular thing. Seeing all the possibilities, all the applications. All the relations and everything. Well, if a thing loves, it is infinite. And so Blake, in my opinion, here is saying that love has a quality where it sees all the potentiality, all the possibility, actually, of something, or someone. So if you are the thing that loves, then you can make all that room for the thing that is loved, the beloved, in other words. Okay, next quote. If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite, for man has closed himself up till he sees all things through narrow chinks of his cavern. So, what I read from William Blake here is that he's basically saying that everything has possibility, and once the doors of perception, or third eye, or that, I don't know if he's referring to that specifically, but if the doors of perception, in other words, if your eyes are fully open and paying attention to the world around you, to the tangible, and concentrating equally, on the abstract connections, you see the possibilities with everything, and it truly is infinite. But Blake is also saying, that man, and so I assume is referring to an archetypal construct of man, or housed in housed in an archetypal context, so to speak. He's referring to man who has closed himself up, in that sense. That's the way I read it anyway. And so this archetypal man, he remains closed up. No, wait, scratch that. No. Yeah. Going back to what I was saying. The part where, for man has closed himself up till he sees all things through narrow chinks of his cavern. Blake is saying there that, you are, and this is my opinion, this is my take, he's saying that you are walled off, essentially, until you see everything come at you. Like, if you look, if you think about Plato's allegory of the cave, here, through narrow chinks of his cavern, it's like, that and it's like an individual, shackled in Plato's cave. You see, you're not there yet, but you can, if you can see the cave entrance, if you can see the light, then, that's the beginning process to realizing the infinite, or, the connectedness of possibilities and all that. Anyway, next quote. Tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what a mortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? So, Blake, to me, is saying something here. Using the metaphor of a tiger, because, of course, tigers are better looking, tigers, there's tigers are a symbol of power and of sort of, dominance, and, in a way that is, sort of like a transcending dominance, if that makes sense, if you can understand what I'm getting at. But anyway, tiger, tiger, burning bright in the forests of the night, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? So Blake is talking about fear. He's talking about, even fear. So sort of, this one confuses me a bit, just because I haven't read it enough times, but I get the impression that he's communicating, he wants to know how it could be, how it could come to pass, how it could happen that he, be situated in a position of equal fear, and, so that, like, he's, who this piece of poetry is concerning itself with, that character is looking at the situation, and they are asking themselves, they're saying to themselves, I seem just as afraid as this tiger, and the tiger could represent anything, right? Like I said, it's a symbol of, transcendent dominance, transcendent power, and it's a tiger could really be a vehicle for something, symbolically speaking, that is. But this, who this piece is concerned with is looking at a situation. They're up against something that is, overwhelming, or should be overwhelming, I should say. Should be overwhelming. And yet they see an equal fear. And so they're asking, what immortal hand or eye could frame thy fearful symmetry? In other words, you know, what am I that I can see, you know, the fear of this massive, you know, force, this tiger, equal to my own fear? So, you know, what am I? There's that question in this quote. So, you know, that's what I think William Blake is saying with this quote. He's saying, you know, he's positing a question to the reader, you know, what are you if you witness this equality, you know, of, you know, unsettling awe, so to speak. Next quote. Those who restrain desire do so because theirs is weak enough to be restrained. So, what I think Blake is saying here is that, you know, if you know, first off, we have to, you know, discuss what desire is. Well, desire differs from passion. Passion is in immediacy. It's what you like. It's right now. Desire is different. Desire is not in immediacy. Desire is in projection. It's in, you know, it's future focused. It's what you want. It's, you know, it's related to your soul. You know, whereas passion's related to your spirit, desire is related to your soul. You know, your soul being a vision of, you know, it could be collective, it could be selective, but it's a vision that you want to make manifest in reality, in physics. It's sort of like it's a metaphysical lens, you know, that you say will transform the world physically. That's, in other words, that's what a soul is. And so desire is, you know, it's like the content of your soul. And so those who restrain desire do so because theirs is weak enough to be restrained, meaning the content of their soul is weak, meaning it's you know, weak could mean that it's broken down, it's worn down, it's old, it's ragged, it's had its, you know, it's dying, it's decaying, it's disintegrating. There's, you know, you can see it. It's mortal. Their soul is mortal. So, you know, those who restrain desire do so because theirs is weak enough to be restrained. Essentially means, the way I read it, that those who try to negate or, you know, try to destroy the content, the desire of another person's, you know, individual soul, those people, you know, are, they have, you know, in essence, sold their soul. You know, they don't see the infinite. Again, you know, with Blake, it comes back to the infinite. It comes back to seeing possibilities, right? Infinity in the palm of my hand, eternity in an hour. It comes back to possibilities. And so what he's saying here is that those who cannot see the possibilities, you know, inherent in anything, they are weak, you know, and because they are weak in this manner, you know, they try to obfuscate your soul. You know, they try to they try to board your windows up, so to speak. You know, they try to block your desire. They try to get in the way, be an obstacle. You know, they try to they try to contaminate the contents of your soul. Anyway, that's how I read that quote. The next quote. The tree which moves some to tears of joy is, in the eyes of others, only a green thing that stands in the way. Some see nature all ridicule and deformity, and some scarce see nature at all. But to the eyes of the man of imagination, nature is imagination itself. So, in my opinion, what Blake is saying here is that, one, he's making a distinction between himself, as the man of imagination. He's making a distinction between, I'm assuming that he's referring to himself, but he's making a distinction between the man of imagination and other people. Other people see nature as ridicule and deformity. So it's something that's against them. It's something that's against their vision. It's it's an obstacle. In other words. And then there are other people who don't even see it at all. So nature is nothing. They see no. They see no. They see no form that was before them, and so there are people who are thoughtless and they have no vision at all, because at least the other people have a vision, but they have become oppressed by their own vision. Thus, they see the ridicule and the deformity in nature. But what Blake is saying here is that to their man of imagination, nature is imagination itself. So what I take that to mean is that nature, is one with the soul bearer, the human being. They are in components animal. There is connection there. So to the eyes of the man of imagination, nature is imagination itself, means that the man of imagination, or a person of imagination, they live with an understanding they are part of the nature. They are part of the nation. They are part to what they are experiencing. They aren't saying, no, this is not me. They're saying, I am both cause and I am both effect in a certain way. Anyway, next quote. What is now proved was once only imagined. So this is one of my favorite William Blake quotes, and it is 100% accurate. People always think that they can't do something, they can't accomplish something, or persevere and change the world. They don't think they can change the world. They certainly don't think they can change it in their image, in any part of their personal image of their self. They don't think they can. Most people, I would say, fall into that category. And all people experience moments where they don't feel like they can do anything, where they feel like they're complete failures. And so what Blake is saying with this quote is, what is now proved was once only imagined, meaning somebody once had the idea that they could, take of themselves, that they could, create, something in their image. Somebody once had that idea and they did it. And it's been proven, So, he's basically, sending the message that, yes, you can. You can bring about, the change that you want to see, the reform that you want to see, you know, from, you can impose your soul, your self-image onto the world, and it can stick, basically, and then adaptations can, natural adaptations can develop over it. Anyway, next quote: "The imagination is not a state; it is the human existence itself." So this is an interesting quote. What I would say, Blake, is getting at is that one's self-image, one's perception, basically, what they see, because William Blake is very perceptive. One's perception is not a state; it is the human existence itself. The human existence, right? Because beings come together. There's this theory of oneness. Now, I'm not so convinced that it is accurate the way that it is generally professed, but I do think that there is something to be said for, coming together, that a lot of us are heading towards relation, and that is the course of our mortal endeavor, so to speak. That we are heading towards relating to, being part of this bigger organism, and so the imagination is not a state; it is the human existence itself. Basically means, in my opinion, that perception is not a mere part of existence, human existence. It is the human existence, because the human existence is headed towards something. It is on that mortal endeavor. It is headed towards some form of relation to create a bigger organism. This could be, young man, young woman, they're heading towards a collision where they wed. You've got, young groom, young bride, and then they become, a unit that, creates children, and then those children branch down other children, family tree time, Anyway, next quote: "I must create a system or be enslaved by another man's. I will not reason and compare. My business is to create." I like this quote of William Blake's. He's basically saying that, he has to bring about his own understanding of of existence, of life and everything, or survival, whatever. he has to bring about his own understanding. That's what a system is. System is, you see all the parts, all the cogs and everything connected. You see all the connectivity and all the machination. That's understanding. When you see all of that, that's understanding, versus comprehending, which that is not. But understanding it is. And so Blake is saying he has to understand, essentially. He has to, create a system so that he can understand, or else he's going to be enslaved by another man's, another person's, and I think that's very, this quote is very relatable, because I think a lot of people feel this way, that if they don't, uh, if they don't figure out everything for themselves, then they're just, basically a pawn sacrifice, right? They are on shaky ground at all times. So you have to. I relate to this quote a lot, and so I think that, I think that's what he's saying. I think that William Blake is saying that you have to, well, he has to anyway, understand, or else he'll be damned, and he's saying that he will not reason and compare. In other words, he will not hold what he is creating, hold his understanding, up, in somebody else's light to judge. He will not judge his system of understanding by somebody else's, measurements, right? So he's also saying that, and then he's saying his business is to create. He's putting all of his energy into it. So you got to respect him for that, right? Anyway, next quote. The man who never alters his opinion is like standing water and breeds reptiles of the mind. So how I read this quote of William Blake's is as alluding to the formation of prejudice. So if one's opinions could be summed up as thoughts that are uninspected assumptions, and these uninspected assumptions, they, if they are not altered, if these assumptions are not inspected to be altered, then they are, they become stagnant. They become, and they start to solidify, and so to speak, and that breeds reptiles of the mind, and reptiles are cold-blooded, right? So that's what prejudices are. Prejudices are cold-blooded assumptions, that haven't been tested, that haven't been altered by further inspection, through the use of perception. Anyway, that's what I think he's saying there. The next quote is, to generalize is to be an idiot. Yes, yeah, to generalize is to be an idiot. What Blake is saying here, I think that everybody can understand. He's saying that generalizations, are simplifications, and so to generalize would be making a habit of simplifying, everything that you're commenting on. So think of it like, think of think of someone who generalizes as opposed to someone who, refers to, a general perception or reception. Think about someone who generalizes, who makes it an activity, and makes it part of their character. Think of that person. They're gonna think, like, I'm trying to think of an example. They're gonna think, after hearing, you put chlorine in swimming pools. They're gonna think, well, you also put chlorine in hot tubs, right? But you don't put chlorine in hot tubs. You put bromine in hot tubs because bromine can withstand the hotter temperatures, that chlorine isn't so good at, withstanding. But, somebody who makes generalizing an activity and makes it part of their agency, so to speak, to generalize. So part of their processing, their independent processing, their individual processing is to generalize. In other words, like to exercise generality, as if it's, like part of their daily regimen, right? Got to generalize, somebody who's doing that, who has integrated, generality into their perception, they are an idiot, because, and that's 100% correct. They are an idiot if they're doing that, because, look, can all generalizations be prevented? Can all of them be helped from being made? No. But you pick your poison carefully. You pick it wisely, and some generalizations, they're the only way to explain certain, certain certain facts, certain concepts. Some generalizations are the only way to explain, these particular facts and concepts. But if you generalize about everything, well, you will become prejudiced, very prejudiced. But not only that, you're just going to be an idiot, and the majority of the stuff that you're going to be saying, like 99.9% of the stuff you're going to be saying, I don't know the actual percentages, I'm just pulling it out of thin air, but the majority of the stuff you're going to be saying is going to be just stupid, and it's going to fall on deaf ears rightfully. It's not going to be rational, because part of rationality, part of thinking things through, is that you don't jump the gun, that you actually, look at the, track you're about to race in, that you actually evaluate. If somebody who is exercising generality, if somebody is, has made, generalizing, part of their daily routine, they are not evaluating. They're just having, these codec thoughts, these simplified, relatable thoughts, simple thoughts, day in, day out, simple thoughts. Anyway, next quote. The road of excess leads to the palace of wisdom. So, what I think William Blake is saying with this quote is, I don't think he's saying that, excess necessarily, leads to the good life. Because think about the word wisdom. Is wisdom really good, to possess? Is it, is it harmless to possess wisdom? Doesn't wisdom do a number on its possessor? So I think the palace of wisdom, that could be a trash heap, um, to any, particular individual. Again, it depends on the individual, but wisdom could be, a trash heap depending on your capacity for wisdom. It's not so. Then a palace becomes a trash heap, and I think that the road to excess, you know, leads to the palace of wisdom, means essentially, the way I read it, that you know it leads to your limitations, or your fill, or basically it leads to you know to the definition of your palace, essentially. Anyway, that's just, I still need to think about that quote a bit more, but that's what I'm ascertaining from it right now. Anyway, next quote. In the universe, there are things that are known and things that are unknown, and in between there are doors. So again, Blake is he's talking about doors, and thus I assume the doors of perception. So in the universe, there are things that are known and things that are unknown. Well, we all know that. And in between, there are doors. So he's basically saying that, between the known and the unknown, there's an opening. So you can know the unknown, essentially. You can walk through the doorway, and now the unknown is known. And yeah, that's what he's saying there, in the way I read it anyway. The next quote: the glory of Christianity is to conquer by forgiveness. So I will pull from an earlier quote about forgiveness of of the friend versus the enemy, and how it's easier to forgive an enemy. So taking this quote into consideration, with that other Christianity, its glory, its greatness, I think Blake is saying, is linked to its conquest via means of forgiveness. And so forgiveness being objective. Now you might say, wait a minute, Christianity, objective? But in a sense, right, in terms of perception, because you got to think about how Blake, comes to a lot of his conclusions. He comes to a lot of his conclusions by perception, and by his relation to the infinite possibilities, right? So here Blake is he's alluding to the distance from which Christianity operates to forgive, because forgiveness requires distance, because it requires objectivity. Now, if you think of the word disacceptance, distance of acceptance, right? This is employed by Christianity, especially, you know, the formation of Christendom employed disacceptance, distance of acceptance, because, they they welcomed they welcomed people into the fold, so to speak, to have, different denominations. They allowed that, right? Because if they didn't allow that, they would, every, denomination, there would only be one, because all the others would have been, slaughtered. Now, of course, I'm assuming that I can't prove that if Christianity, I forgot my train of thought right then. Let me think. So, as I was saying, Christendom, it, has utilized disacceptance, distance of acceptance, allowing for, differing denominations to branch out of its belief system. But, as a belief system, and, I can't prove that Christianity, did that willingly, given the conditionality of factions of the religion. But what I can prove, and I think what William Blake is alluding to, is that the belief system, so when we strip away all this, fashion of this church, that church, the other church, and we just look at the belief system, what Christianity, what it's great at, and what it makes it objective, is the disacceptance employed inherent in the belief system, which allows from, a multitude of, adapted denominations to branch out from the original, form of the belief system. Now, you look at other religions, and, be fair, be honest, they don't do that. Now, I'm not saying Christianity is better or not better. I'm not making any comment on that. But what I'm saying is that William Blake, I think he was pointing that out in the way that he could, which was he was pointing out that the belief system, so the code, so to speak, of the religion, the code of the religion of Christianity, it's glorious, it's great, its greatness is due to the fact that it is an objective religious code. In other words, belief system code. That's a more apt way of putting it. William Blake, in my opinion, is saying here that the belief system code of Christianity is shows its greatness in its objectivity to disaccept in order to forgive. And I think we can all see that. I think you have to be living under a rock not to perceive that in, when you, take a comparative look at all the impressing religions active right now, and, active right now in the world today. I think you have to be living under a rock to not see that. Anyway, next quote. You never know what is enough unless you know what is more than enough. I think, that's, right on target there, you don't know, nobody knows. I think William Blake is alluding to the fact, so the perception, that nobody knows what their limitations are until they run into them, until they hit the wall. They, so to speak, they don't know that a wall is there. They don't know that there is an enough until they find it. It's something to be found. Yeah. Anyway, that's my opinion on that quote. The next quote. Every night and every morn, some to misery are born. Every morn and every night, some are born to sweet delight. Some are born to endless night. So, if we think about, this quote, this poem piece, what Blake is saying to me in this, anyway, this is my take. He's talking about conception. He's talking about, what goes into, making, a newborn and making a creation. So think of like a baby, right? What goes into making the baby? Well, there's obviously fertilization and there's the egg, right? We all know that. But what Blake is saying here, in my opinion, he's referring to the mood of conception. He's referring to the interpersonal, the quality of the interpersonal relationship between the man and the woman as they conceive. If you feel what I'm saying, and so he's talking and saying, some to misery are born. So I would read that as, well, some men and some women have, because they are because they can't get it anywhere else, so they just have it to have it, right? And there are, eggs get fertilized that way. And then he goes on to say, he goes on to say, some are born to sweet delight. So this is when, the man's there and the woman's there, and it's not because this is just the only that I can get. They're both there because they actually do have a genuine affection for one another. And so Blake is commenting on that, and that some are born to genuine affection. And then, finally, some are born to endless night. And I think what Blake is referring to here, what he's alluding to, I should say, is rape. I think he's alluding to rape. The puzzle piece fits, it makes sense, He's alluding to rape, endless night, darkness, In other words, when you're born of rape, I can speak on this because I am a product of rape. Things will always be shaded. They will always, if you think about the tonal value chart, of of quality of light, right? I like to think of being a product of rape as you have more of a dim, light. It's not, bright and, vibrant, makes you think of vitality and all that, but it's dim. You can see, that there is a thing called day, but you also see that there's another thing, that can trap you, that can make you think you're blind. There's night, there's the darkness. Anyway, but uh, you know, what Blake is saying in this quote, this poem quote, is, the way I read it, is basically, he's talking about the the different eggs that are fertilized, right? I'm being silly saying that, but kind of not. But he's talking about the different children born into the world, basically. Okay, next quote. Eternity is in love with the productions of time. So, eternity, if we pull back from an earlier quote, um, eternity in an hour, eternity is in love with the productions of time. So, eternity is a concept of possibility. It's a concept that you gain from seeing the possibility, from seeing the interconnectedness of everything, from seeing, all that is relation and all that is application, and extension, and so eternity is in love with the productions of time. I take that to mean possibility is in love with the depictions of possibility, or which would be the productions of time. Oh wait, scratch that. No, possibility is in love with the productions of time, in the sense that time produces progress, and if we refer, back to an earlier quote, of Blake's, where, he said something along the lines of love. Well, he didn't say. He wrote something along the lines of, love being, seeing the infinite, seeing the possibility. So eternity, sees the possibility of progress, which is the productions of time, and thus is in love. Anyway, next quote. Truth can never be told so as to be understood and not be believed. And okay, pulling from an earlier quote that I read, truth that's told with bad intent beats all the lies you can invent. Truth can never be told so as to be understood and not be believed. This is connected to that other quote. So William Blake is saying that basically, reality. But in this context, he's talking specifically of reception, because reception accords to truth. Fact accords to perception. Reception accords to truth. So he's talking about reception, this element of reality, so to speak. And, so you might as well read it. Reception can never be told so as to be understood and not be believed, because you receive it, so you believe it. And so that's what Blake is saying here, essentially. Okay, next quote. I was angry with my friend. I told my wrath did end. I was angry with my foe. I told it not, my wrath did grow. Wrath. He's basically saying here, in my opinion, that, if you don't know no, not if you don't know somebody, but if you don't like somebody, you're less inclined to say anything to them. Even if you don't like them, you're less inclined. So the more you're going to feel antagonistic, because the more you're going to feel antagonized by that other person, because you don't even feel like you can say anything to them. You don't even feel like you can, get whatever's on your chest off your chest. Whereas, if you're angry with your friend, you can tell them you're angry, and then that's off your chest. But you don't even talk to your foe. And might Blake be saying here, hinting that the reason why someone is your foe in the first place is because you don't communicate with them, because there's a lack of communication? Maybe. I'm just throwing that out there. Next quote, final quote here. Excessive sorrow laughs, excessive joy weeps. I think that's, I 100% agree with that. And I think what Blake is saying is basically, if you, have a miserable life to the maximum, then, you are going to, it's going to be so miserable that it has to be a joke. So you're going to display, you're going to wear the affect of a joke. It's going to be, you're going to be all smiles and ha 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 ha, but it's not going to be genuine smiles. It's going to be a laugh, basically. It's imagine a cynical person, laughing hysterically. That's a very sad person. It's a really sad person, but they're, it's like the clown, right? It's, it's a painted on smile, but underneath the makeup, there's a frown. And, excessive joy weeps. I think of this as, being true because I see a lot of people who've had, what we would generally, I think, associate as being, legendary status, excellent, example lives. And they will often be more emotional in their affect because they're more grateful, So the more and more grateful, the more and more thankful you genuinely get to feel, the more thanks and praise that is injected into your veins, so to speak, the more you're going to cry. You're going to cry tears of joy. You're going to cry tears of joy because you you are more complete. The right words are escaping me at this moment, but I hope you feel what I'm saying there. Anyway, That was the quote diagnosis for William Blake. If you've got any historical figure that you would like me to do a quote diagnosis of and find out how I interpret and /intuit what they're saying, comment it below the name. Yeah, have a good day. Peace, meow.